Tonight, the sudden death of a television legend.
Our beloved colleague, one of the premier journalists of our time, Tim Russert, died this afternoon after collapsing at work at the NBC News Bureau in Washington, D.C.
We'll look back at the extraordinary career of NBC's Tim Russert. I'm Harry Smith. Also tonight, as the rivers keep rising, much of Iowa is declared a disaster area. Where will the misery spread next? And pharmacies giving customers a more expensive drug than the prescription calls for. It's legal, and taxpayers are picking up the tab.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is off tonight, but she'll be joining us a bit later to talk about our top story. Tim Russert, the longtime moderator of Meet the Press, collapsed and died today at the NBC News Bureau in Washington while preparing for Sunday's broadcast. He was 58 years old. Tim was a friend to many of us here at CBS, and we send our condolences to his family and to our colleagues at NBC. Tim Russert spent his life doing what he loved most and what he did best. We begin our coverage with Richard Schlesinger.
The story of Tim Russert's life in many ways is the story of what's possible in America. Long before he made it in the land of starched collars, it was a blue-collar neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, that shaped him.
It shaped his belief in social justice and economic justice. He was a progressive, and he didn't make any secret of it.
His father, about whom he wrote a best-selling book, was a garbage collector. The young Russert helped him haul garbage during the summers, and his father helped him as the source of his values and the source of one of his greatest ideas. On election night in 2000, he made history by tracking one of the closest elections ever on plain white boards.
This is the answer.
It was, he said, inspired by his father, who gave him advice every reporter, if not every politician, follows: keep it simple.
But he taught me more by the quiet eloquence of his hard work, his basic decency, his intense loyalty. He taught me the true lessons of life.
Russert's background would have made a good backstory if he had chosen a life in public office. A Jesuit education, nothing fancy, a law degree from Cleveland State, far from Ivy League, still anything but Bush League.
One of the toughest and fairest interviewers around, a spirit that understands how ordinary people feel in the political process, because Tim was an extraordinary, ordinary person.
He was a counselor and press secretary to New York's Governor Mario Cuomo and chief of staff to the late New York Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
He was a Buffalonian, very simple, very direct, very natural, no airs about him, very straightforward, didn't try to be cute about things.
But Russert never forgot where he came from and never let anyone else forget either. He was a lifelong sports fan, especially the Buffalo teams. Through the years, he rose to the journalistic stratosphere, married another prominent journalist, magazine writer Maureen Orth, and was the toast of Washington. Their son Luke had just graduated from college, and the family had just returned from a European trip when Russert died. Leaving a legacy of plain talking and straight shooting he used on everyone, regardless of their position.
As the Pope approached me, you heard this tough, no-nonsense, hard-hitting moderator of Meet the Press begin our conversation by saying, "Bless me, Father." He took my arm and said, "You are the man called Timothy from NBC." I said, "I am your guy. Don't forget this face." He said, "They tell me you're a very important man."
Tim Russert's passion was politics, and he was as much a part of this presidential campaign as the candidates themselves, sparring with them on Meet the Press. As Anthony Mason reports now, if it was Sunday, it was Tim Russert.
Or will die of AIDS. The next proposal is to provide $300 million.
He was the longest-serving host of the longest-running program in the history of television.
From NBC News in Washington, this is Meet the Press with Tim Russert.
Tim Russert took over the moderator's chair at Meet the Press in 1991, and for 17 years probed and prodded the major political figures of our time.
What should be the U.S. strategy in Iraq?
His Sunday morning program set the agenda for the week in Washington, and any politician seeking a path to higher office knew you had to pass through Russert and meet the press.
From the moment that music came on, you knew serious business was going to be done. It was the most rigorous interview, and yet Tim had the confidence to throw in homey, even cornball references.
Time magazine this year called him one of the 100 most influential people in the world. As NBC's Washington bureau chief, he led the network's election coverage. It was during that long election night in 2000, with a tight presidential race hanging in the balance, that he pulled out that eraser board to do some electoral college math.
Those high-fluting computers, Tom. This is the answer.
No fancy graphics, just simple show and tell, and riveting television. In 2003, as the United States prepared to go to war in Iraq, Russert pressed Vice President Dick Cheney about White House assumptions.
Do you think the American people are prepared for a long, costly, and bloody battle with significant American casualties? Well, I don't think it's likely to unfold that way, Tim, because I really do believe we will be greeted as liberators.
At the top, $1.5 billion.
Again, in this presidential campaign, Russert had a prominent role in early debates.
There wasn't a better interviewer in television, not a more thoughtful analyst of our politics, and he was also one of the finest men I knew.
Tim Russert was at the top of his profession. He was a man of honesty and integrity. He was hard, but he was always fair.
Today, just before 4 o'clock, it was Tom Brokaw who broke in with the stunning news.
And it is my sad duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, the moderator of Meet the Press and NBC's Washington bureau chief, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
Just as an historic presidential race was taking shape, we had lost one of politics' most passionate and respected observers. It's hard to imagine a November without him. Anthony Mason, CBS News, New York.
And we'll have more about Tim Russert later in the broadcast. Two of his many friends, Katie Couric and Face the Nation anchor Bob Schieffer, will join me to share their memories. First, though, our other top story, the flooding in the Midwest. Iowa's getting the worst of it tonight. In Cedar Rapids, 3,000 homes and a hospital have been evacuated. The Cedar River is expected to crest tonight at 32 feet. That's nearly 20 feet above flood level and about 13 feet higher than the last big flood in 1993. All told, 83 of Iowa's 99 counties have been declared disaster areas. Dean Reynolds is in the tiny town of Oakville, where they fear they could be next. Dean?
Harry, there are frantic efforts across this state tonight to save whole towns, large and small.
All are trying to avoid the fate of Cedar Rapids, now a city literally at sea. 400 of its blocks below the surface. Streets and homes awash in water. Its city hall, an abandoned ship.
It came up so fast. I mean, within 3 hours, our basement filled.
There's been so little time to comprehend the disaster still unfolding before their eyes. The water inching closer by the minute toward a crest 4 yards higher than it's ever been before, and creating a contagious anxiety elsewhere. In Des Moines, a voluntary evacuation is underway, with the Des Moines River crest expected this evening. But it was in the east that concerns were greatest, on the Iowa River at Columbus Junction.
We're trying to surround this small area, low area here, which has got our major portion of our businesses in. We're trying to create what I always call a bathtub, except we don't want the water in the bathtub. We want to keep the water out of the bathtub.
In Wapello, 13 miles downriver,
it's going to be major flooding in the lower lying areas adjacent to the rivers.
They did what you do when the river you live on floods.
They're going crazy here.
Hoping they can survive a breached levee earlier today.
I know that nothing's going to happen because my mom knows that.
A map shows you where these rivers are all flowing. Southeast toward the Mississippi and the little town of Oakville, population 439. Where today an army of road warriors was mustered to hold back the Iowa and save the town. You think you're going to be successful?
Well, we sure hope so.
Men, women, and children, and even a few prisoners put their shoulders into the fight against time and tide.
The attitude's great. Everybody's working hard to get everything accomplished that we need to get accomplished.
But the river they're fighting is grotesquely swollen beyond anyone's memory. Joining up with the Cedar River here in Oakville, now a lonely peninsula with its back to the Mississippi. In town, as he made a prudent move to higher ground, Wes Schutt offered a candid appraisal.
I think that in a couple of days, this, where we're standing now, will be water.
Could very well be.
You hear a lot of that around here now. There's a feeling that the river will eventually come up over this levee, but there's the hope that it won't. Harry?
Dean, this reminds me so much of the floods in 1993. I get the sense just from watching your reports this week, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
That's right. By Monday, this river, the Iowa, is going to be at 32 feet. The problem with that is this new and improved levee is not at 32 feet, so you know what's going to happen.
All right, Dean Reynolds in Iowa this evening for us. Thanks. In Northern California, hot, dry, windy weather is the problem, helping to spread wildfires that have burned tens of thousands of acres. 9,000 people in the town of Paradise, north of Sacramento, were forced from their homes. At least 20 homes have been destroyed there. There's much more CBS News ahead this Friday, including pharmacies secretly switching pills, costing taxpayers millions of dollars. We will follow the money. But up next, Katie Couric and Bob Schieffer share their memories of our friend and colleague, Tim Russert.